Okay, well, thanks everyone for attending today's webinar that we have on. We've got as our guest today BC Transit, and they're going to be talking about some RapidBus corridors work that's going on within the region and planning that's taking place. So thanks for attending, and I hope you'll find this session informative. I'm Bruce Beams, the president of the Vancouver Island section of CITE. We have a number of other people that are on our board here with a treasurer, secretary, and vice president. I don't think they've called in yet, so I'll just be leading the presentation today before I hand over to the folks at BC Transit. And for those of you that have called in, some of you may be members of the Vancouver Island section, members of CITE, so we're going to be conducting our AGM after we go through the webinar presentation from BC Transit first off. So we've got an hour set aside for the BC Transit component, and then from 12:30 to 1, should we need that much time to go through the AGM component. So anybody else that's on just for the BC Transit component, you're happy to drop off at the end of that part of this webinar. So today we have two presenters from BC Transit, Lisa Mullins, who's a senior manager for government relations for the Victoria Regional Transit System. So she'll be starting off with the presentation today, and she's supported by or with Tristan Ford, who's a transit planner at BC Transit. He's got a degree in engineering physics, so I must say I'm not accustomed to planners or engineers coming from a physics graduate program, but I'm sure he'll have some valuable insight for us regardless. So welcome to both Lisa and Tristan. Thanks for putting your hand up to do this presentation today, and we all look forward to hearing what you have to say. So from there, I will hand over to Lisa, and Stephen is our CITE IT tech guru who's sort of working in the background. He'll be transiting us from presenter to presenter. So Stephen, I think if you want to make Lisa present her side of the presentation here, and I'll hand it over. Thanks, Lisa.
Everyone, thank you for coming, and thanks for having us, Bruce. Can everybody see my screen okay?
Yeah, I've got it.
Okay, perfect.
Oh, sorry, Lisa, I'll just mention one other thing. If people have questions during the course of the presentation, there's a chat window, which you can find should be down at the bottom of your screen. So if you have any questions, you can type them in there. I'll monitor them, and I will present them as Lisa's or Tristan are working through their presentations. But just type them in, and we can go from there. Thanks, Lisa.
Sure. I'm just trying to figure out how to move to the next slide. There we go. So I'm just going to do a little bit of an introduction to the Victoria Regional Transit System. This might be repeat information for some of you that have seen it before, but I've been working in the Victoria Regional Transit System for just over 2 years now. So just got into working in Victoria right around when COVID kind of started to hit. So it's been an interesting couple of years. Previous to that, I was working for Transit in the same role, senior manager government relations, but for the south coast of British Columbia. So I came into the Victoria system, and for the most part, I spend the majority of my time working very closely with the Commission, preparing staff reports for Commission meetings, keeping Commission members informed, but also with local government partners across the region. So we work very closely with the CRD and the municipalities on the plans that we do, as well as doing public engagement. We're a shared services model, so we do internally have support staff, everything from schedulers to planners to our operations in Victoria, which BC Transit runs the conventional operations and contracts out Handy Dart. And we have our own marketing and comms team and everything that you could imagine to support transit across all of British Columbia, with the exception of Metro Vancouver, that's run by TransLink. So in terms of the Victoria Regional Transit System, as just an overall, we're the second largest system in British Columbia, second to TransLink. We carry in Victoria over 100,000 passenger trips per day, offering fixed route service, as well as our custom Handy Dart service that offers door-to-door service for those with cognitive or physical disabilities. And we carry more people per hour at lower cost per hour than any of our Canadian peers, in part because of our shared services model and funding that comes from the province as well as municipalities and motor fuel tax, which is unique to the province of British Columbia. We have 351 buses in our system, give or take. There's always some kind of going out for repairs and new ones coming in. Over 1 million service hours on the road. We have approximately 56 routes with about 2,300 bus stops. Now, most of these numbers are pre-COVID. We are in recovery mode now. So this is what we're striving to get back to. And we keep seeing improvements. And then, of course, we all kind of have little setbacks whenever there's a new variant. So here we are today. The Victoria Regional Transit Commission was established under the British Columbia Transit Act. It's the only transit commission in British Columbia. In all of our other regions, municipalities set their service hours that they would like to see for their system, and then seek funding approval from the province for a portion of that. Here we have 13 municipalities in the CRD that are represented by 8 elected officials, and the chair is appointed by the Minister for Transportation and Infrastructure. BC Transit acts as the staff for the Transit Commission, and then we do have contracted services provided by BC Transit, as I said, for conventional and contracted out for our custom service. The Victoria Regional Transit Commission is responsible for planning the community, establishing transit priorities and routes. They set service levels, so how many hours are budgeted for the system, and they approve the transit budget every year. They're also responsible for setting fares for the region and providing local tax subsidies. So they create the taxation body through which the municipalities are taxed for their transit service. BC Transit then takes the Victoria Regional Transit Commission priorities and turns them into operating plans and capital plans. We work with the province to access funding and operate the conventional service and manage a capital program for the assets. So all of the buses throughout British Columbia are owned by BC Transit, and certainly big capital projects around facilities management as well. It's very important that we collaborate, though, with local government and others to create a great transit system around Victoria. As many of you are aware, the municipal roads are controlled by each individual municipality. So that's 13 across the region that we need to collaborate with to plan road use. And the highways, of course, are the Ministry of Transportation. So we do collaboration around bus stops and shelters. Also, local planning initiatives. So we're involved with the official community plans of municipalities wherever we can be. We have a development referral program. So anytime there's development going on in any of the municipalities, we do encourage the municipalities to reach out with the development referral and loop BC Transit in, so we can provide advice on transit within the development, which is really important. You wouldn't believe how many times I've had someone reach out and say, we'd like transit service on our road, and then we find out there's not enough road for the buses to navigate down. So an important part of the process. Stakeholder engagement. So in any of our planning processes, we go out to the public and ask for their opinions on route changes and infrastructure changes. And the CRD, of course, we collaborate with the CRD on their regional growth strategy, regional parks and trails, and just certainly keeping them informed. They have a transportation committee of elected officials that we go and communicate to fairly regularly. And as well, I'm a part of a transportation working group with the CRD so that we can try to make sure that we're collaborating on all of the things that affect us all in having a great transit system. So I'm going to turn things over to Tristan now. I just wanted to give a brief overview of that. And then primarily we wanted to come here today to talk about the Victoria Regional RapidBus implementation strategy. That's kind of our big plan for the next couple of years that we're looking forward to rolling out and hopefully increasing revenue and ridership and creating a more effective transit system for the entire region with this. So with that, I will turn it over to Tristan and look forward to his presentation and any questions you might have.
Can everyone hear me all right?
Yep, you're good, Tristan.
Okay, good thing we tested that earlier. All right, yeah, thanks everyone for joining. I see a few familiar names here, which is great. And as Bruce and Lisa mentioned, I'm a transit planner for the Victoria system, and I also do planning for the Salt Spring Island system. Before that, I worked in engineering consulting for primarily rail services in Vancouver. And also, yeah, I come from a physics background, and the interest came from, I'm just really passionate about the public service aspect of public transit and the climate, effects that it can help reduce. So that's where I came from, and I also love how you can model traffic flow as sort of analogous to fluid dynamics. Anyway, that's a bit of an aside. So today, yeah, I just wanted to provide an overview of the completed and ongoing planning works that are driving transit initiatives in the VRTS, Victoria Regional Transit System, such as the RapidBus program. So first of all, the Victoria Region Transit Future Plan was completed in 2011 and provided a vision for the region's transit network over the following 25 years. This plan incorporated a review of existing transit services, regional and local land use plans, demographic projections, and travel demand forecasts. It identified several key initiatives and continues to guide investment in support of livable communities. The Victoria Regional Transit System Service Review was a result of the Transit Future Plan and reviewed and recommended service standards to align with the network's future goals. This includes standards such as minimum service frequencies for different route types, stop spacing guidelines, and other standards used today in the Victoria system. Building upon the TFP and the service review, local area transit plans for various regions in the Victoria system have been developed. So the graphic on the right here shows the areas for which we complete LATPs, or local area transit plans. And these plans aim to support the goals set out in the previous documents, as well as identify transit service and infrastructure priorities for the next 5 to 7-ish years. The 10-year vision is an annually updated document with actionable and measurable strategies, and this provides the VRTC and the public with a roadmap for transit development into the future. Lastly, the RapidBus implementation strategy, which will be the primary topic of the presentation today, continues the effort to implement the vision set forward by the TFP by creating a rapid transit network in the Victoria Regional Transit System. Next slide, please. Yeah, as I mentioned, we'll be going through the RapidBus implementation strategy. Next slide. Outline. So first we'll do an introduction, including some frequently asked questions and some key features of the RapidBus implementation strategy. We'll take a look at where we are now, as well as the timeline for implementation. And lastly, hopefully we'll have enough time to go through some infrastructure updates as well. Next slide. In June 2021, we released our RapidBus implementation strategy, which outlines the rollout of RapidBus in the region. And the strategy also supports the VRTC's goal of increasing transit mode share to 15% by 2038. The implementation of RapidBus services has the potential to significantly increase transit mode share and support the many goals of the Victoria region by promoting post-pandemic regional economic recovery, shaping and supporting growth and regional connectivity, improving passenger comfort and experience, improving efficiency and capacity of the transit system, and supporting the region's climate action goals. For existing and future customers, RapidBus will be a connected, frequent, fast, and reliable transit service that aims to outperform the personal vehicle in speed, comfort, and reliability. Over
Tristan,
time,
I've got a question on that. If the city, say, is looking, or the region is looking for a reduction in greenhouse gas emissions, is that a discussion that they have with BC Transit, and you do some projection to say, well, in order to help the city or whatever the community might be, I don't know if it's a provincial thing, but that you have to get up to that level of ridership to help meet those targets? Does that come into your modeling when you say you expect to have a whatever the 30% or a certain ridership taking rapid transit or buses?
Yeah, that's something that I think a lot of agencies are working towards right now. It's a pretty complex modeling exercise to determine the avoided greenhouse gas emissions, and it's something that we're actually working on right now. And the goal is to have it be part of our prioritization of expansions and service changes in the future. So it's definitely a factor and something that we're working on, if that answers your question.
That's great, thanks.
So where was I? All right, yeah, so outperform the personal vehicle in speed, comfort, and reliability. Over time, the network of RapidBus routes will create a high-capacity transit system connecting mobility hubs with existing frequent transit routes and other local and specialized services. The targeted minimum frequency will be 10 minutes, and all RapidBus corridors will include transit priority infrastructure to significantly reduce travel times and improve reliability for our customers. Next. Right, some frequently asked questions. So when will RapidBus be implemented? Infrastructure enhancements and service expansion has been underway for the past several years in support of the rapid transit network. And the goal is to implement the West Shore downtown line within the next 3 years, and then subsequent lines, proposed lines in years to follow. Is RapidBus different than the frequent transit network? And the answer is yes. So becoming a RapidBus line includes delivering consistent and frequent service, limiting the number of stops to high volume areas, expanding transit priority methods, and implementing attractive and comfortable stations, as well as creating a unique brand. What are some of the impacts of COVID? So communities everywhere are facing a climb towards economic recovery. And by enhancing the efficient movement of people, RapidBus will generate economic engagement, as well as help essential workers get to their job sites. Furthermore, climate change, affordability, and congestion will continue beyond the pandemic, and it will be important to leverage the momentum made in transit ridership growth over the past 5 years. Where will RapidBus be implemented? So the Transit Future Plan identified the original rapid transit network that prioritized improving service quality between the West Shore, Peninsula, UVic, and downtown Victoria. So these connections remain the priority today, with several other corridors that could be candidates in the future. And lastly, why RapidBus and not LRT? The Victoria region has consistently identified the need for high capacity transit services along key corridors, and RapidBus can provide a sufficient level of capacity at a fraction of the cost of an LRT system, and it can be considered a precursor to potential rail-based transit in the future. Implementing RapidBus does not preclude the need of an LRT in the future. All right, some key features. So again, the Transit Future Plan emphasized the need to transition from the hub and spoke system, where services are concentrated in the downtown Victoria core, to a network structure of service to connect designated regional centers as well as other transit lines. The figure on the slide here provides a conceptual layout for the future network that makes up the higher level service layers, so the rapid transit and frequent transit networks. The RTN serves as the connection between primary travel hubs in the region, with the frequent transit network, or FTN, filling in the higher density mixed use corridors that provide convenient connections to the RTN. Some of the key changes in the table there for RapidBus are branding, all door boarding, and transit priority methods. Where are we now? Since the Transit Future Plan, the RTN has been the focus of enhanced transit services, infrastructure, and network integration improvements. The figure on the right illustrates the strategic facilities that have been implemented to date and are a direct result of collaboration between community stakeholders, as well as local, regional, and provincial agencies. Dedicated bus lanes on Douglas Street from north of Harold through to Tillicum have been implemented. And furthermore, transit priority treatments are in place at key locations such as Highway 1 and Tillicum, Highway 17 in Sayward, and Millstream and Helmkin. Currently underway are the design for expanding bus on shoulder lanes on sections of Highway 1, as well as transit priority treatments for the Old Island Highway.
Tristan, I've got a question has come in here of the RapidBus planning. Any plans to be battery electric zero emission vehicles in line with BC Transit's low carbon fleet program? And I might just add that we're working on a project with BC Transit at the moment for 110 battery electric bus handy dart facility out in New Royal. So there's that's one area that I know that BC Transit's making the initiative there. 110 battery electric buses, but I don't know, are there any other initiatives that BC Transit has for that?
I might pass this one to Lisa.
Thanks, Tristan. Yeah, certainly we do have a goal of overachieving on the province's standards for emissions by 2025, and we are moving to a fully electric fleet over time. So right now, as Bruce said, we're working on the Handy Dart facility out in View Royal. That will be our first battery electric facility. But we do have, and we could almost give a whole presentation at some point on battery electric bus, a plan to roll all of our buses over time over to battery electric. Another thing that we're doing to reduce greenhouse gas emissions is the step that we had between diesel and electrification with CNG, and we're also now looking into RNG and switching our CNG buses eventually over to renewable RNG. So lots of things in terms of working towards a greener fleet and a quieter, cleaner fleet. But that's part of the picture. The other part of the picture is getting people out of single occupancy vehicles and onto transit. And some of the things we're doing around RapidBus and its frequency will help there. And also some of the other things that we have coming online in the future, like electronic fare payment, our next ride system for navigation, and those type of things that we hope to make it more attractive model and get folks out of those single occupancy vehicles. Back to you, Tristan. I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, thanks, Lisa.
Alrighty, let's look at some data. So service levels on, oh, sorry, a little bit of background there. Service levels on the RTN corridors are some of the highest in the region, with a bus every 1 to 2 minutes on southern sections of Douglas Street, and buses every 2 to 6 minutes outside the core. So figures on the left here indicate peak buses per hour, as well as peak passengers per hour and transit mode share. And the figure on the right illustrates daily ridership on the RTN corridors. So as we can see, as the ridership on these corridors has grown, so has the corresponding transit mode share. And aspirations to significantly increase transit mode share means that many of these corridors will need increasing levels of service and ridership. So RapidBus aims to improve on this goal with a higher capacity bus transit system. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned earlier, RapidBus aims to help alleviate challenges associated with climate change, safety, affordability, transit mode share, and economic recovery. And additionally, the Victoria region faces some key hurdles in the form of growth, mobility, and reliability. So population and employment in Victoria are projected to increase by about 1% per year over the next 20 years. And the core and West Shore communities are expected to see 95% of the total population growth, while the core area accounts for more than 60% of expected employment growth, as seen in the figure on the right. So this further emphasizes the need for high capacity services between the West Shore and core area communities. Furthermore, congestion along major corridors is expected to continue growing, as illustrated in the figures on the left and in the center. And increased congestion could reduce travel speeds and reliability for transit without dedicated facilities. Also, the attractiveness of transit along these corridors could increase substantially with dedicated bus lanes. Next slide, please. Go on to the timeline side of things. We'll take a look at the phasing of the implementation strategy. So this has been divided into 3 phases that are expected to progress concurrently. Phase 1 focuses on the implementation of the West Shore Downtown Victoria RapidBus line, including infrastructure designs, branding, and public engagement. The West Shore Local Area Transit Plan is scheduled for completion in February and will confirm additional details and timelines. Phase 2 continues to design and analyze the Mackenzie and Peninsula RapidBus corridors through detailed studies and infrastructure improvements. The next step include a Mackenzie corridor study in alignment with the District of Saanich in the near future, as well as Peninsula RapidBus configurations to be explored further through the Peninsula Local Area Transit Plan, and that's also scheduled for completion in February. Finally, Phase 3 explores the opportunities to expand the RTN to other parts of the Victoria region. Guiding these projects towards a successful outcome, it'll be a multi-partner approach with BC Transit, MOTI, local government partners, and federal government each playing a key role. Next slide, please. On this slide, we can see the proposed short-term routing for the West Shore Downtown Victoria RapidBus, as well as the medium-term routing. So in the short term, we will convert the Route 50 alignment to a RapidBus service with changes to stop spacing in Langford to improve operational speed. And this implementation will also include expanded service levels as well as improved stations and amenities. In the medium term, this line has options to extend to Belmont Market or West Hills, and these details are currently being finalized through the West Shore LATP. Next. The Mackenzie line will connect Uptown and UVic via the urban nodes of Quadra Village and University Heights. And key next steps include a RapidBus corridor study on Mackenzie Avenue to develop transit priority and RapidBus station concepts, as well as the completion of upgrades to the UVic exchange. Next slide, please. Peninsula Line will connect the urban centers of Sydney, Uptown, and downtown Victoria with the Swartz Bay Ferry Terminal via Highway 17. Integration of transit services and intermodal connections will be vital due to the rural land uses surrounding this corridor. And on the far right-hand side, we can see a long-term network concept that interlines the various transit networks on the peninsula. Additionally, transit priority treatments along Highway 17 are being advanced in collaboration with MOTI and include queue jumpers as well as bus-on-shoulder facilities to reduce travel times and improve reliability. Both the West Shore and Peninsula LATPs are planned for endorsement by the VRTC in February and will further outline the details of their respective lines, as I mentioned a little earlier. Next slide. So I think we've got enough time to go through infrastructure, hopefully. I'll try and blaze through it. First of all, the Island Highway Transit Priority. Detailed design has been completed for highway upgrades between the interchange of Highway 1 and 6 Mile Road and Atkins in the town of View Royal, and at the Whale Road intersection in Colwood. Pending approval, construction phase is planned to initiate this year. For stations, agreements are being developed with the City of Langford, Colwood, and Victoria. Procurement of planning and design services is underway, and the study is expected to be complete by the end of this year. Highway 1, MOTI is advancing planning work along the Douglas Street Highway 1 corridor to support existing BC Transit initiatives. This work includes exploring transit priority treatments that align with BC Transit priorities identified through the Transit Future Plan and the South Island Transportation Strategy. West Shore Transit Priority, Phase 2 detailed design planning will begin later this year for advancement of transit priority concepts approved in principle for Souk Road and Goldstream Avenue. And lastly, Uptown Transit Priority and Transit-Oriented Development. MOTI is advancing planning work to develop transit and active transportation priorities and improvements to serve near-term goals that will align with the future development of the Uptown site and do not preclude the long-term plan. Excuse me. The plan includes a proposal for bus-only lanes on Ravine Road and Vernon Avenue, a RapidBus station on Highway 1, and expanded bus zone capacity on Cary Road. This plan will support BC Transit in advancing long-term plans for the Uptown Transit Hub and transit-oriented development opportunities. Well, that was a lot of information. I believe that's it for my portion. I'll pass it back to Lisa.
Yes, I think that's it. I just, we have time for questions if anyone has any additional questions. I see there's one in the chat now, but I don't know if you want to handle that, Bruce, handle the questions.
Sure. Well, I think without anything else there, yeah, perhaps you can just make a comment whether or not the trolley electric is a better option. Everyone's probably familiar with Vancouver, that they've got that sort of a system over there, but is there any thoughts of doing anything like that here on the island?
I'm sorry, did you say trolley electric?
Trolley electric, yes.
Yeah, I kind of have to defer that question to our fleet department. I think that we're exploring options around electric. I don't know that trolley electric is what will come out of that, but I think we're still in the investigative process as to what all of those electric buses will look like, and I'll probably would have more information in the next 6 months that I could be able to speak to when it comes to the type of electric buses and infrastructure we're looking to have.
Yeah, I think certainly when you look at the TAC conferences or you know, the other types of conferences that went on where you could actually go in person to attend and see where they had the buses that were on offer, there was such a wide variety of styles and types and methods of propulsion that you know, seems a bit of a daunting task to figure out which system is the way to go to reduce your greenhouse gas emissions. So I'm sure there's separate studies that take place for that, but of course,
certainly, and that's the work that BC Transit has been doing for sure behind the scenes, and it's I could gather more information on it, but at this point, I know there's been a lot of work going on, and we haven't received an update on where we're landing on that. A lot more investigative work needed to be done than to just say, hey, we're going to go electric and flip the switch. So everything from what type of infrastructure we're going to use to what type of fleet we're going to use. And I don't think the final decisions are public as of yet. So when we do have that information, I'll be excited to come back and present it to the group. And certainly not all vehicle types are available yet either. So that's something we're keenly aware of, that light duty and medium duty vehicles are more easily accessible as electric vehicles than, say, our heavy duty double deckers, which is what we'd want to use on the rapid transit network. But things are progressing so quickly in that environment that by the time this is implemented, that may have changed. So
certainly. So I see Todd has joined us as the as Vice President for our Vancouver Island section. I might just note that Ryan Vanderputten is also on the call from the start. I think Todd might have missed that we had shifted the start to 11:30, but Ryan's our national president of CITE. So welcome to the call, Ryan. There he is for those of you that don't know him. So thanks, guys, for calling in. So I don't know if Ryan or Todd, if you just called in, but if you've heard anything on the presentation, if you had any questions that you might want to put to BC Transit, or if there's anybody else wants to put in the chat box, we can get them to field any questions you might have.
I see a few questions in the chat. First one, bikes. Can you talk about bikes on buses? I might also have to defer that one to Lisa. I'm not sure exactly what about bikes on buses.
I mean, we do carry bikes on all of our buses. Currently, 2 bikes is the maximum we can carry on our buses. We are looking into racks that carry 3, and certainly we're looking into, in collaboration with municipalities, having better facilities along the RapidBus route for bike storage, because that's something that's sort of been requested too, but that would be in collaboration when we get to more of the detailed design of what those stations look like and what we could incorporate in terms of bike storage and lockers. So I don't know if that answers the question or if there's something else surrounding bikes and buses.
Andy, I think you can unmute Andy if there's anything else you wanted to add to that question. I guess if he's maybe finding he's unmute, if he has anything else. I've a friend of my son had an electric bike that he rides to school. I tried putting that on the back of my vehicle and just about needed a forklift. are there any restrictions on what type of bikes you can put on the front of the bus?
Yeah, certainly at this point we can't carry the electric bikes on the buses, so I don't know if that'll be something that changes over time. But you're right, it's the weight of them and the size of them sometimes precludes that ability. So that'll have to be something we look to in the future as more people are using that as a mode of transportation. Okay, and I see Todd's put a question in here about plans to develop intercity transit services. For example, between Victoria and Duncan and Nanaimo, and that's a hot topic, I think, at times for transportation over the Malahat. So I don't know if that's Todd's particular interest, but certainly it's, if we can reduce the traffic load over the Malahat by getting that public transit system up and running, maybe you could expand on that if there's anything. We do have currently a commuter bus that goes a few times a day for commuters coming from up in the Cobble Hill, Cowichan area down into downtown Victoria. There's certainly been ongoing talks in the past from Nanaimo and the Regional District of Nanaimo around whether or not we'd want to have better connections in the future. But I think that our priority right now in all of our communities and especially in Victoria is recovering the ridership that we've lost through COVID before expanding into other areas at this point that may have lower ridership. But certainly it would, it's something that we're able to do. The Victoria Regional Transit Commission entered into agreement with Cowichan for that commuter, and certainly could look at entering into agreements with other regional districts or city for intercity transport. We do have 9 interregional transit systems across British Columbia, so it's not something that we haven't done before. If there's interested parties and if they think that there's going to be adequate ridership on those routes and that's going to improve things, we can certainly implement those types of expansions in the future. Yeah, well, Stephen, who I mentioned earlier, is our IT fellow here on the call. He lives up Island, so I think if there's a service, he wants to make sure he's the one at the front of the line to get on the bus. So he's just put a note in here. There might be something starting in February, is what he understands. So
I see another question from Kristen. Is the intent for the Peninsula Line to provide direct service to the airport, YYJ, and will this connection be implemented in the short term? Lisa, if you want to go back, I think 2 slides.
Sorry, hold on one sec.
So while she's finding it, we did some work with the airport, it was maybe 10 years ago, and we got numbers from BC Transit at the time, and I think the average ridership to the airport was 2 passengers per bus. Mind you, that was about 10 years ago, so I don't know if you have numbers, and if that's hopefully that's increased since then, but I don't
have the numbers on hand.
No,
but,
sorry, I can't find a way to go back, Tristan. I'm not as familiar with this go-to meeting, and I can't see how to get back to that slide.
So I'll try and talk through it, I guess. The longer term network concept does not have the RapidBus going direct to the airport, but the frequent transit network that's proposed for the long term on the peninsula will connect with the rapid transit network and then provide service to the airport. So that's the idea moving forward, and we'll have to engage on those options as we get closer.
Okay, so I don't know that I've got any other questions here. Oh, I think Dan put his hand up. Don't look at the monitor there.
Thanks, Bruce. If I could, I wanted to just speak rather than type because I actually wanted to say thanks to Lisa and to Tristan for making the presentation and allowing us all the opportunity to learn here. So thank you both. Perhaps I have 2 questions, and maybe they're a little long-winded. I think my first one is around delivery of these projects in collaboration with municipalities and ministry, and knowing there's some jurisdictional overlap there. And so how do you see these rolling out in terms of who's taking the lead in delivering them? And sort of part to that is funding. And probably knowing that, these are transit focused initiatives, but there's sort of broader multimodal and community gains to be had by carrying them out. And so just curious if you can elaborate on funding, delivery, and sort of that broader multimodal perspective to these.
Tristan, you want me to take that, or you want to take that?
I think I'll leave that one to you, Lisa.
Sure. So I guess the first part of the question, how we're dealing with the various partners on collaboration and delivering these projects. We have a regular working group that meets that has members of the ministry as well as municipalities that are working on portions of this project. So especially right now, the West Shore to downtown. So we're doing collaborative agreements on land use and how we're going to move these projects forward, and are hoping to, once we put those agreements in place, be able to apply for funding through ISIP funding and also any other funding that might be available for transportation through multimodal uses. And the ministry is very interested in this project as well. So really it's about making sure that we have that alignment and agreement, and we have done a lot of work to make sure that we've gone through the CRD Transportation Committee as well to make sure that their priorities aligned with RapidBus, and developed working groups with each of the municipalities on this. So I think we have a pretty strong way forward in delivering on these projects, both from a collaboration standpoint with the stakeholders as well as the ability to gain funding. So I hope that that answers that, but some of these things are underway. So we already have an agreement and we've hired consultants for the Mackenzie Corridor study. That's a collaboration between the District of Saanich and BC Transit. And we have a consultant working on that, and that's already kicked off. And we have a kickoff meeting coming up with the City of Victoria. We've hired a contractor to do the RapidBus study work that was a combined agreement between the City of Victoria and BC Transit. So as these things are rolling out, we're coming to agreements collaboratively on how they're going to be handled, and then hiring consultants to help us with those recommendations.
Great. And I have a follow-up and not terribly related question, if I could. I suppose, RapidBus now being kind of the priority corridors for the region, which is neat, and it's sort of the natural evolution of the system here regionally. And I guarantee you've already given some thought to this, but curious if you can elaborate on sort of what some of the secondary route and local route planning might be around that, and how the system and other routes might be restructured to sort of reflect, I guess, the emphasis and opportunity for coordination with these strengthened RapidBus alignments.
Want that one, Tristan?
Yeah, I can take a stab. So I think the rapid transit lines are definitely going to form sort of the backbone of the system moving forward. And then the purpose of the frequent transit network is to fill in those mixed use and heavily used corridors to create the connections with the rapid transit routes. In terms of routing changes for the current frequent transit networks, that remains to be seen, I believe, through through the ongoing studies. And for instance, the West Shore Local Area Transit Plan will have some considerations around that with respect to the West Shore downtown RapidBus line. So those projects will, I think, come about as a result of the local area transit plans and the following RapidBus studies that go along to facilitate and finalize the designs.
Yeah, I know Dan's a big rider, but I know, Dan, you've got your bike hanging on the wall now, so maybe your intention is to be taking more public transit rather than your bike. I'm not sure.
It's my functional art.
But yeah, so those are good questions. Thanks. One of the slides you had at the start, Lisa, was about I think you said you had lower costs than your peers across Canada. And that just made me think about BC Ferries when COVID first hit, that BC Ferries turned a big profit. And I thought, how do they do that when they're closing down the routes and they've got low ridership? But it turns out they were getting a lot of money from the government. So it looked like they were doing really well. But you did mention also that BC Transit gets funding from the government. So how do how do you manage to get the lower cost compared to all your peers across Canada that you do it so much better here? What's the secret that you see?
Well, I think there's a couple things. I think it's partially our shared service model. In other areas of Canada, an individual municipality might need to contract transit services, and with that, hire a scheduler and hire a marketing and hire a planner. And we're able to do that kind of all in-house for all of British Columbia. So it's taking advantage of economies of scale partially. And the other part is most municipalities in Canada are funding that 100% through their property taxation and maybe motor fuel tax. But most of them, well, I don't think any of them actually get any provincial funding to offset any of the costs for their public transit system. So that's unique to British Columbia. And that's what allows us to kind of have a more cost-effective transit system here compared to the rest of Canada. Now, it is true when we're talking about BC Ferries and BC Transit, we were established as an essential service throughout the pandemic. And there were times at the beginning where we weren't receiving revenue for that service, that we were allowing people to board without a transaction because we were fearful at the time of making sure everybody was safe. And we took a bit of a revenue hit. And of course, with people being encouraged to stay home and not ride transit, we were still having buses running around virtually empty. So we, at the beginning of COVID, had gone down to about 30% of our previous ridership. I'm happy to say we're up to 65% of our previous ridership now, but we're not out of the woods yet. I mean, we all know we were thinking we're all going back to normal in September, and here we are in January with people trying to stay away from each other again. So I think that we have to be a little bit nimble and look at how we optimize our services in the next little while to get the most revenue recovery that we can, and to at the same time encourage people to get out of their vehicles and onto transit. So I think that there might be areas that we look at optimizing to make things more efficient, and there's going to be at the same time more of our expansion resources put into the areas where we're going to get the most bang for our buck, and we think that is through the RapidBus corridors that we've identified here. And we were lucky enough to have Safe Restart funding come from the province. So for the first couple of years of COVID, the province provided funding to us as well as BC Ferries and TransLink to kind of make us whole around the additional costs of COVID and the loss of revenue that we had. But when that funding comes to an end, that's when we're going to have to really look at what other alternatives we have for funding transit, whether or not the province is going to continue with Safe Restart 2.0, whether we can regain ridership and revenue. And motor fuel tax is certainly an ongoing concern as well, because with more people working from home, there's a lot of changes that have happened to traffic and transit patterns, and we're still in it right now. So recovering ridership is our primary goal, and a year from now, we might be able to reflect on what changes, if any, have been more permanent in the system, and where we need to optimize to move forward into the future, and of what a post-COVID world might look like.
Yeah, and then maybe you need to contact BC Hydro and see if you can get some funding from them for everybody that has electric cars that you don't get a fuel tax from.
Certainly, there's lots of conversations happening about what that looks like in the future.
That's Todd's area, though. He's all in policy, so he'll he'd have some ideas on that, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, COVID's just throwing so many curveballs at everybody. How do you make a predictable trajectory for your planning? It's it's a challenge that's just got so many different aspects to it.
Yeah, and there's certainly been some advantages. I mean, at least through this process, we've learned to be a lot more agile than we were previously. We're having to look at our scheduling differently than we did in the past. So, I mean, even when we were preparing for September, thinking, students would be back, we're trying to do a lot more of dispatching on demand and reserving some hours for those inevitable things that are just happening in our world now, instead of dedicating it all to scheduled service, so that we can be a little bit more agile in where we send the buses when we need to. So yeah, we're looking at ways to be more efficient, because we're just in a whole new era now. And a lot of that means more digital first initiatives, and you're going to see a lot more of that rolling out in the year to come too, whether it's electronic fare that's coming, whether, our next ride, more and more people are relying on things like transit app. And although you might have seen in the news a little bit of public outcry when we didn't have paper schedules with one of our recent transit service changes.
Yep.
And we did re-implement them in January because in truth, there are still people that need that. But it does allow us to be a lot more agile when we can change things quickly on the web and change things quickly in our app when there are driver shortages or when we have to have cancellations. It's easier to do that than to communicate in a printed schedule that's going to stay static for 6 months.
Yeah, I had a hard time recovering after the buses in Vancouver stopped having the free buzzer flyers they used to have years ago, but I got over that. Well, we got about less than 10 minutes left here. There's one last question. Maybe we'll make it the last one, and then we can wrap up. Just a question from Tim. What are BC Transit's plans around integration of car sharing services and the bus stop locations, park and rides, and so forth? Any planning there?
Well,
car sharing services, yeah.
For car sharing, I think I haven't heard of any of our plans. If there are some, maybe I'll leave that one for Lisa. But for the RapidBus stop locations and park and rides, we've already got some park and rides implemented along the proposed Peninsula routing as well as the other RapidBus routes. And the additional locations or wherever those might be implemented are being studied through the various corridor studies. And you can expect them to be where we've got high density and good transit oriented development. So I'd say I guess the main one is along the peninsula, and those studies are a little bit in the future, I believe. So keep an eye out for where those are going to be. And you can also, if we were able to go back in the presentation, there's a slide there where it showed some of the existing locations, but that's also in our transit implementation strategy on our website. So I'd encourage you to take a look at that for where they are currently.
Yeah, just to add to that, in the presentation deck, if you're sharing that out, Bruce, all of the plans that Tristan spoke to that BC Transit currently has are identified in there and with the links. So our 10-year transit vision is a really good place to see in real time where we're at on projects and what we have planned for the future, from infrastructure to service changes and everything. And it is updated annually and kept up fairly regularly. So that can give you a little bit more information on what we're doing. In terms of the question around car share, I don't have an answer for that right now. I'd have to go back to one of the other departments and see if I can get an update on that, but I wasn't really prepared to speak about that today. So maybe that's something we can speak next time we're here on.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, well, thanks for those responses. And I should just say to Tristan, I hope you didn't take it as a slight at the start when I mentioned you're a physics major, because we should note that CITE, which used to be known as a community of transportation engineers, is now known as a community of transportation professionals, and it does take a lot of other specialists, let's say, other than engineers, to make the whole system work. Planners, engineers, technicians, technologists, and now we can add physicists or whatever else it might be to help figure out the best solutions for the problems we're trying to solve. So on that, I'd thank both Lisa and Tristan for your presentation today. It was very informative, and we're glad to have been able to host this for you and for you to participate. And if there's anybody on the call that's a CITE Vancouver Island section member, you're welcome to stay on. At the bottom of the hour, we will be having a brief AGM. So please stay online if you'd like to participate. And other than that, that's a wrap. Lisa and Tristan, thanks again for presenting today.
Thanks for having us. We're happy to come anytime.
Great. Thanks a lot then. So we'll sign off. Thank you.
Thanks so much.